The voice of Brian Schottenheimer, newly minted head coach of the Dallas Cowboys, carries a mixture of reverence, energy, and unfiltered football obsession. And as he sat down ahead of week 2 to reflect on his journey, his mindset, and the challenges that lie ahead, it became clear that this was not simply another pregame media hit. It was a moment that underscored how his personal philosophy and professional outlook are colliding with one of the most high-profile jobs in American sports. And in telling his story, we can trace the threads that bind the intensity of game day preparation, the psychology of leadership, the philosophy of quarterback development, the gravity of Cowboys fandom, and the tactical chess match looming against the Giants. It begins with a reminder that Schottenheimer is not just a football coach, but a football lifer, a man who admits with no hesitation that he is a football junkie, the type who cannot turn off the Red Zone channel and whose Sundays are less about rest and more about absorbing every schematic wrinkle across multiple television screens. And that raw hunger bleeds into the way he talks about his job. Coaching the Dallas Cowboys, a franchise synonymous with both immense pressure and historic prestige, a team whose home field mystique at AT&T Stadium has swung between fortress and question mark depending on the era. When Schottenheimer reflects on his first home game as head coach, his answer is not tinged with anxiety, but with appreciation, acknowledging the blessing of even being in the position, framing the Cowboys' job as both a burden of responsibility and a privilege that still has the power to humble a man raised in locker rooms and sideline shadows. For while he insists every game is an honor, the thought of returning to AT&T Stadium in front of tens of thousands of fans wearing jerseys, blasting music, and generating electricity is clearly a source of fuel. And in invoking the memory of his father's first coaching stop in Kansas City, when the stands barely drew 28,000 before the winds came and transformed Arrowhead into one of football's iconic fortresses, he is implicitly asking Cowboys fans to recognize their role in shaping outcomes, reminding them that home field advantage is not some abstract talking point, but a palpable, visceral force that alters player psychology, disrupts opposing offenses, and provides a psychological edge that statistics alone cannot capture. Yet Schottenheimer's world is not simply one of rah-rah motivation. It is the granular detail of managing games, and when pressed on the complexities of clock management, timeout strategy, and sideline composure, he frames it as a process of repetition, confidence earned not by default, but through practice, noting how preseason reps smoothed his early decisions, and he highlights moments like orchestrating a quick first-half scoring drive against Philadelphia, with Dak Prescott delivering to CeeDee Lamb before kicker Brandon Aubrey drilled a long field goal, as evidence that his staff is capable of handling situational football with poise, though Schottenheimer is quick to deflect praise onto his staffers, such as Ryan Feeder, who provides weekly rundowns of league-wide tendencies, teaching the coaching staff to anticipate everything from replay reversals to down-by-contact rulings, a subtle window into how modern head coaches are less singular generals than CEOs overseeing sprawling operations, where expertise is distributed, but accountability remains centralized. In reflecting on his own coaching style, Schottenheimer cannot escape the shadow of quarterbacks past, especially Russell Wilson, with whom he enjoyed the Let Russ Cook era in Seattle, and his admiration for Wilson's deep ball artistry remains evident. Yet when he pivots to Dak Prescott, his tone shifts to one of tailoring rather than imitation, acknowledging that while some core beliefs about quarterback play are universal, each passer has distinct strengths, personalities, and rhythms that require adaptation. And he stresses that even within a single roster, quarterbacks must be coached differently. Dak, Joe, Will Greer, all requiring nuanced instruction, a point that bleeds into his philosophical musings about rookie quarterbacks, where he argues that if competition between a veteran and a young player is close, you play the rookie because only game reps can accelerate growth. But if the veteran is clearly better, then patience and observation still hold value, citing the early careers of Drew Brees and Doug Flutie in San Diego as proof that sometimes the slow burn produces more sustainable results. But this week, philosophy meets reality, because the Cowboys will be without Don Bland, a versatile defensive back whose ability to slide between corner and nickel makes him an invaluable chess piece. And while Schottenheimer praises defensive coordinator Matt Eberflus and his staff for their adaptability, acknowledging the likelihood of safeties filling in at nickel, he admits the absence limits their ability to disguise coverages and rotate responsibilities. A quiet but significant challenge against a Giants team that, whatever its flaws, has invested heavily in its defensive front and can disrupt games in the trenches. And this is where Schottenheimer leans into his conviction that physicality is not merely about running the football, but a mindset that permeates every position group. Wide receivers must fight through press coverage at the top of routes. Quarterbacks must stand in and deliver knowing they'll take hits. And running backs must square up blitzing linebackers without hesitation, all of it constituting a broader definition of toughness that extends beyond play calls into an identity. It is also in this realm that the story of CeeDee Lamb becomes instructive. For while some outside narratives focused on a tough season opener, Schottenheimer insists there was never concern inside the building, recounting how Lamb, instead of sulking after the loss, was back on the jugs machine early the next morning, and even running solo routes on the field by Sunday, a detail meant to emphasize Lamb's hunger and professionalism, painting a picture not of a star wideout nursing bruised pride, but of an athlete determined to channel frustration into production, with Schottenheimer even quoting Lamb as saying that adversity woke up a monster, a soundbite tailor-made to inspire fans and terrify opponents. Yet for all the micro-narratives, the macro remains the Giants, a team whose identity is forged in its defensive line, with stars like Dexter Lawrence capable of collapsing pockets from the interior, Brian Burns bringing speed and athleticism off the edge, and Kayvon Thibodeau embodying the relentless motor of a young pass rusher hungry to disrupt games. And Schottenheimer makes clear that while he respects their pass rush, the Cowboys' plan is to force New York to stop the run first, daring them to hold up against a physical ground game before unleashing their pass rush arsenal, a strategy rooted in pragmatism and history. For in the NFC East, games are often decided less by finesse and more by attrition, by which side can impose its will at the line of scrimmage. As the conversation winds down, there are lighter moments. Schottenheimer discussing his eclectic pregame playlist, ranging from Christian music to R&B to locker room anthems, his playful banter with radio hosts, and his acknowledgement that camaraderie and levity matter in a profession defined by intensity. But the subtext of it all is clear. This is a coach aware of both the microscope under which he operates and the broader legacy of the job he holds, balancing humility with confidence, detail with big-picture vision.